On this episode, I speak with the founders of CoXist Studio, Frank and Megan Lin. We talk about their background, how they met, and what inspired each of them to pursue a career in architecture. We discuss their adaptation of mid-century principles and their modern approach to problem-solving designs. We also talk about some current projects in which they serve as both the architects and the developers. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for listening. Elevate your construction projects with trademarks. Durable, waterproof vinyl markers that stand up to the toughest conditions. Perfect for accurately marking locations for electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and other essential elements. These heavy-duty markers won't wear off or move even under heavy traffic. Available in various shapes and colors, they ensure clear, professional communication on the job site. Streamline your layout process and maintain accountability to architectural plans with trademarks. New customers enjoy 15% off at checkout. Visit trademarklayout.com to get yours today. Well, Megan and Frank, I appreciate you guys making it on, and I appreciate you reaching out to me as well. I'm really excited to have you guys on. I'm a big fan of y'all's work. How long have y'all been in Austin?
Well, we've been in Austin about 13 years.
13 years.
13 years, but we started business about 2014, so almost 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, about
okay.
10 years, yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, so y'all are the owners of CoXist Studio here in Austin, Texas. And just looking online, I mean, y'all been featured in quite a bit. Y'all been featured in like Austin Home and Dwell and Arc Daily and a bunch of different publications and some online publications as well, and named Austin's Best Architect in 2021 and 2022. So that's awesome, and I appreciate you guys coming on. Like I said, I'm really excited to have you here. So I wanted to kick it off. I wanted to get to know you two and your background and how y'all came to Austin.
Absolutely. And thanks for having us on. And we're super excited to talk to you. We've been listening to your podcast and all wonderful people you have on there, and the feedback that they've been giving about the industry has been pretty amazing. So.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. And I had Brent Fannin on. I know Brent, you two, y'all know each other really well. Y'all build together. So that's how I kind of got to see y'all's work for the first time, touring one of y'all's projects with Brent, and I was just blown away. It's really beautiful. I love y'all's style. It's kind of like that modern or mid-century modern. Like, that's just right up my alley, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But yeah, if you could, give us the rundown, like your history growing up. What was your childhood like, and give us your story.
Deep.
Yeah. Going deep. Yeah, let's get into it. Let's go.
Well, I mean, I guess we could just even start with, like, Frank and I, we met in grad school. So we'll go a little further down the line.
Okay.
But, and we were best friends in grad school. We worked together on projects, but as, like, time progressed, we realized we're going to be more than friends. And since then, it's been some time since grad school, but, we got married, moved out to California, and started working together. But we've kind of had this architectural working relationship since, like, the very beginnings of us getting together and creating a family.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks again for having us.
For sure.
I really appreciate that. Give us the time to be on here. But yeah, I think, Megan and I met in grad school. But prior to that, I was came to the States when I was 12 years old. So as a Taiwanese kid, moving from Taiwan to United States, we landed in South Texas. That's where I grew up.
Really?
It's a different world, right?
Yeah,
so everybody's instead of learning English, everybody's speaking Spanish down there. So that was an eye-opening for us. But it was great for us. It's like, our family was separated for a while, but that was the point where we all got back together, reunited together.
Nice.
So, but at that point, it doesn't matter where we end up. We just have to be together.
Yeah.
So, long story short, through school, that's when we met each other in grad school at Washington University, when we attempt for Master of Architecture.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So that's how we met, and then after we graduated, both of us was ambitious. We wanted to work for the Star Architect, right?
Yeah.
So we applied New York, Chicago, and LA, and both of us landed in LA. So we worked there for a few years, knowing that, we're trying to get our portfolio ready, geared towards, the future, right? So we're there. We literally just work our ass off, 7 days a week, and then rarely see each other in LA. And that's the lifestyle of, being a young architect right out of school. You just work really hard. Yeah. And when we decided to having family, and that's when we decided to move to Austin. Mm-hmm. So there's a story behind that. But we can get into that later too as well.
So did y'all ended up at the same company, or when y'all worked in LA, or y'all did different things?
We did different things when we were in LA. I actually worked on museums and art galleries when I was in Los Angeles, and did some work with like the Art Institute of Chicago, kind of flying back and forth to Chicago, working on gallery work, and then local art galleries in Los Angeles. And then there were a few like residential houses in our office, but I was more working on the museum side. Okay.
Yeah. So I was mainly focusing on high-rise design, hospitality design.
Gotcha.
So we're doing a lot of hotel resort, just a lot of kind of high-end design development. So one of my first projects right out of grad school was working for a company named Graph Lab. So they did a lot of commercial work with NGM hotels. So I was part of the design team for the Arias hotels. Wow. So that was my first project out of grad school. But mainly in LA, my focus expertise was pretty much high-rise design and hospitality.
Okay. Well, so what brought you to Austin?
Well, kids, kind of. Yeah, I mean, I was pregnant with our first child, Asher, and we're just ready for a change. I mean, we love Los Angeles, but it's a hard city, an expensive city. I could say that about Austin. Austin's expensive now, but there, 13 years ago, it was a little bit different. And so we just had to think more about raising a family and having a more work-life balance. And Frank was from Texas, really down in McAllen growing up after he came to the U.S. And so we thought, I said, if we're going to move anywhere, it's got to be Austin if we're in Texas. Yeah. And when we went down to Texas while I was pregnant just to look, we fell in love with it. We drank the water. And after that, the first week we put money down on our first house and decided we were going to move down to Austin and create a family down here.
Yeah. So after that one week vacation, put the money down, went back and quit our job. And then, so that was the turning point. And we were pretty fortunate. Yeah. The company I was with, they wanted me to stay on with them. Uh-huh. So they say, I want you to take the job with you, move down to Austin. And that's what we did. We packed up our bags, moved down to Austin, and still working all the project out. Actually, most of my project was overseas in China. Oh, okay. So I was doing hotel resort, golf course resort, all that. And I just have an entire staff back in LA support me. So I was doing all design, and then they were, have staff back in LA. So it's kind of like we did that for a few years. And then when we started did our first renovation for our own private home for ourselves. Yeah. And that's when the project got noticed by Dual Magazine, got published.
Oh, really?
Right away. And then you can see people drive by our house constantly throughout the day, and then stop and kind of admire the design. To a point, we start getting work. And that's when we, 2014, decided maybe this is a turning point for us. Our career path is to start our own practice.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's how it started.
I wish people drove by my house and stopped and said, wow, that's such a beautiful house. They probably drive by and be like, oh, wow, look at that. Look at that slum. Just kid stuff everywhere. Like, oh, man.
Well, we're pretty fortunate because I would say Megan's parents I'm blessed, to have amazing in-law. Mm-hmm. Her parents are pretty fabulous. They believe in what we do. They always are the champion of what we do all the time. So when we came down to Austin, they really kind of want to help us kickstart our career. So he helped invest in our first renovation project.
That's great.
And through that renovation project, that's how we, able to make a small mark here in Austin, and then trying to take that and turn it into something bigger.
That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Like, my parents gave me my first project while I was still in grad school. They had like an addition on their house they needed and like a bathroom, and they're just like, you know what, draw it up. we'll price it out and we'll do it. And it was like
That's so cool.
one of the coolest learning experiences, because not a lot of kids that are in grad school get to work on a project before they're even out. So I just learned, just from that first experience, like how to work with a contractor, how to do drawings. You learn so much. And we were still doing the project when we moved out to LA, and my bosses were great there too. They knew I was working on this project, and they let me kind of give me some advice and assisted me with that. But, you just learn through so much through experience and by doing. And I think that's a lot of what like Frank and I do now. Where like, if you don't know something, ask the people around you, learn by doing. You got to get out there, and you have to like figure things out for yourself.
Oh, agreed. And I know I've talked about that several times on the podcast, about just like specifically with kids, about, letting your kids fail and like getting those experiences, and doing things on their own. And I think oftentimes it's hard sometimes for parents to, have your kids in those uncomfortable situations, or to, go through a little bit of pain, and but it's ultimately it's good for them, and they do get the experience. And when I think back too on my childhood, like that's kind of how my parents were. They were, I don't want to say they were hands off, but they were just supportive. And I was one of those I was always in the garage tinkering. I would do sculpture, I would do art, I would build, whatever I could think of doing. And I never got any kind of discouragement. It was always just like, hey, what are you doing? And how can we help you? Or, what are you working on? And there was never, it was always encouragement, and they were just going to let me do whatever. But I think that's great, that they're able to do that for y'all, and, kickstart y'all's journey here. But before I want to get into how CoXist happened, how it came about, what, when you think back into your childhood, like what was it that got you into architecture?
Well, I think, Frank will speak to his part also, but we both had also an interest in art, really, where it first came up. I just loved to draw. I loved art, and really wasn't really thinking about architecture necessarily at a younger age. I don't think that was really presented to me as an option in school at all. It just didn't, come to mind. And I think some people get clued in on architecture earlier if they're fortunate to get that experience.
Sure.
But my grandmother and I used to just go and do open houses and check out spaces.
Yeah.
We'd do it on the weekends, and I don't know, just get a little peek into what other people's lives are like. And I just used to love that. That was one of my favorite things to do, is to check out the houses and spend time with her. And we just have that conversation about the spaces we saw.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and for me, it's similar to Megan. I love art. I love drawing, especially animations when I was young.
Really?
So I love drawing animation. So when I was young, I know that I want to be an artist.
Okay.
As getting older, getting to high school, my dad actually asked me, what do you want to do? What are you going to major in college? And I told him I want to be an artist. I want to study art. Yeah. And my dad, as an Asian parents, they said, no, I'm not going to support you to go to college and end up being a starving artist.
Yeah.
So he's really adamant about that. But my mom, on the other hand, she was really supportive. She was started thinking we can send you to Japan. They had the best animation school. So she was really, really supportive. But my dad was, on the other hand, was not, prone to that idea, right? But that was also the time when my parents decided to start their own business, to start their own restaurant business in South Texas.
Okay.
So at that time, I came across a set of blueprint of the renovations. And that kind of sparked some interest. I didn't know if I was going to go into architecture, but just because through that set of drawings, I took a drafting class in high school. And the teacher that was teaching that course really see something in me. Mm-hmm. So through that course, and that kind of started to trigger the idea, art don't have to be just art. Art can be expressed through architecture, right?
Sure,
it can be something, you can design something bigger and more tangible. People can actually use it.
That's right.
So that kind of took the path and leading me into architecture program in college.
Do you think, so as a parent yourself, when you had that conversation and you got that reaction from your dad, I mean, how did you feel at the time, and versus how do you feel now? I mean, are you appreciative of that? You know what he said, or
Well, I understand where he's coming from.
yeah,
You know, we are an immigrant family. He literally came to the United States with $50 in his pocket, with nothing.
yeah,
Right? So he really built from the ground up. For him, he wanted me to have the white collar job and me be stable
Sure.
and be successful. And then from his upbringing, knowing that as artists, he really had to struggle quite a bit. He didn't want to see me going through that. So I totally understand where he's coming from. So, but looking back, you know, I still have no regret. You know, I still can pursue art in different way, right?
Absolutely.
So in that sense, no regrets
at all.
No regrets at all, and I think it all works out for this is the reason for it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Well, let's get into CoXist. So you start with your own personal home, and that kind of kicks off the studio, the CoXist Studio. Really kind of go into how that came about. Like, was that y'all's ultimate goal after moving to Austin? Like, this is our dream. This is what we want to do, was start our own firm.
Well, I think Frank always wanted to start his own firm, and I kind of initially just went along for the ride.
Yeah.
Because I do really, I mean, I love what I do. I love working in architecture, but I also love being in the projects. And so sometimes you think, and as your business grows, that sometimes you kind of lose being in the projects. But so really Frank pulled me along on the initial journey, but I'm really glad he did, because we're really enjoying what we're doing. I'm getting to do things that maybe I never thought I'd be doing, you know, and we get to work like such a team together on things, and being able to sit side by side as a married couple. Like, a lot of people are like, how can you do that? But I actually think that makes our relationship even stronger. Yeah. You know, if you get in a disagreement, you just move on. You gotta, the day goes on, and you figure out how to work together. And I just loved working over the years and building a business with him. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm so glad she went along with it. But, you know, I would say, I think she knew me back then in grad school. I'm like diehard, one of the students that's really diehard in architecture. I just love what I do. I put 110% into it, right? So I never sleep. I just always in the drawing board, building models, drawings. I loved it, right? So I was diehard after we married too, working for a firm. Like, if you work for a premium firm, star architect, he's got to work. Yeah. So I really bust my butt for them, right? Not until when we have our first child. I think that kind of like opened my mind, understanding life's not about architecture anymore. Yeah. It's about family, right? Absolutely. About people you love. Yep. Right? You can have a career, but at the same time, you gotta, now you bring the child, this person to this world. You need to shift your mindset to focusing on them and to your wife, and then you can have a better career because you can have a life balance. Yep. So with that, I realized, in order to have that kind of career, that kind of lifestyle that I want, I need to start our own practice. So I can set what we want to do, when we want to do, and if we want to work hard, we work hard. If we don't, we want to focus on family, I can carve some time out to be with family. So can really set my own schedule. And also, Megan and I can establish our voice. Because when you're working for somebody else, other firm, it's great. But whatever you produce, whatever you design, it still belongs to the company, right? So for us, we have a strong opinion about what we want to do with our life and what we want to do through our design to make impact in our community. So having that voice is very important. So in order to do that, you need to start your own practice. Yeah, so absolutely. That was the ambitions for us to have that.
So y'all, what was your first project after, I guess, your personal one, and after CoXist got going? What was the breakout project for you guys?
Well, I think the breakout project was really with Brent Fannin. Okay.
But I would say, before that, it's the pro bono work.
Sure. Yeah. We did pro bono work with our church, actually. And that's actually how Brent found us, because they were building a new campus, and then we just decided to help out and put some design efforts forward to make it, feel like a community, because I think we really enjoy the community aspect of what we do. And so by doing that, Brent got to know us through that aspect, and then he gave us a chance, because really it's hard to break into a market without having a portfolio, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so for him, it was like taking a chance on us to do work with him. And actually that first project was a very successful project together,
Mm-hmm.
and we were able to build a relationship through that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's like I said, I'm a huge fan of y'all's work, and the style is like that modern or mid-century modern style, and it's just timeless. It's beautiful, and I love the natural kind of materials that are used, the stone and the wood. A lot of glass, a lot of full height glass. But so if you can talk about that for a little bit, if you can, about why that particular style, what drew you into that particular style of architecture?
Well, I mean, when we say mid-century, I think, the design itself, I think now we're kind of going away saying mid-century. I would say it still have the mid-century inherent kind of characteristic.
Sure.
Right? But I think when we start thinking about design, we think about the context, right?
Okay.
The context of surrounding, the landscape, the neighborhood scale, all that kind of starts to inform what architecture should be.
Okay.
As you can see, early on the work into today's, there's some sort of transformation between what we do. At the same time, they're still very timeless.
Okay.
We're trying to design something that more like bespoke, I guess.
Okay.
Not a one set template.
Yeah, I don't mean to like box you in a category,
Right, yeah.
and say like y'all just do this particular style. It's so I don't mean to do that. I probably lack the the knowledge of how to explain it, but
yeah, we definitely did initially start with the mid-century approach.
Okay.
But we did analyzing the design itself, and then really trying to take that mid-century 1970 kind of design style and really trying to give a modern take on it.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
So kind of we evolved that kind to generate into new ideas.
Okay.
So that is definitely the
I think
basic
you have
foundation.
to know history
sure.
in order to make something that's like has a little twist and difference in it. So we did study of mid-century design quite a bit, and the things that really kind of drew us to that initially too was there's something very clear about the systems that are in mid-century design, like the structure is exposed, it's expressing structure. There's a roof plane that expresses the roof plane. The floor plan really works around like the way the indoor outdoor, but then also how the modern like person at that time lives. So there's a lot of those elements in thinking that we are doing into our current homes that we're doing now. But then we're trying to think like, okay, this is how the traditional mid-century works. What's a little tweak or twist on that mid-century approach? But the only way you can really kind of do that is by like really understanding the past, and I think it's really important to know where we came from and how we get to where we're going. And so I think we're now, as we continue to like tweak and look at it, we're looking like, okay, knowing what we know now, like how do we continue to like build on that and make it something different and new.
Yeah. And I like you brought up, you kind of have to understand the past, because before this I was doing a little bit of reading on mid-century modern and just how that whole style came to be. And it's interesting because the time when it happened was, it was World War II, or, as World War II was ending, and sort of this industrial boom in America. And so there was a lot of material sciences that came about, and a lot of industrial materials that were now being used in homes. So like the use of steel, and they were able to make windows bigger, so now you could have full height, floor to ceiling windows, things like that really, as material science progressed and industry progressed, the architecture changed. And so I thought that was really interesting.
Sure.
So it's like now you're morphing the style to today. So like what are you seeing that's going on now that's causing the style to change? Like what's having to change?
I would say how people live, right? How people live and how they interact with the community and how we site the buildings all kind of start to change the landscape a little bit, how we design.
Okay.
I will say that. And also technology constantly changes too. We can really push the boundary of what we do.
Sure.
Building science have become so advanced. The way we put the building together, we can push the envelope a little bit more and be bold about it. I think that kind of help us kind of really take that idea and really pushing into different directions.
I think even if you just look at a floor plan from different periods, you can almost see what period it's in. Because, you know, like you look at a house from the 90s and it has like a massive master bedroom and bath. And then you look at a house from like a different period. There's just like certain elements that just seem to change with how people change. So,
that's
you
true.
know, like there is almost like, if you're really studying the plans, it almost tells you the period it's done in, even though it might have a timeless aspect. It's just the value of people and what they value at that moment might change.
Like the idea of a formal dining room. You know, like
exactly.
we don't have those anymore. Like nobody wants a
living room, right?
Yeah. Like it's just you're right. Like the floor plan, you know, the shape of the house changes based on like how people live their lives and you know the social aspect of it too.
I mean, I think we've been living in this very open floor plan for a while, and I've noticed and can see with people that they don't exactly want closed off rooms, but they're also have some resistance now to being completely open, like one big open space.
Sure.
There is a shift that's kind of happening that they want rooms to be a little bit more defined, maybe not as enclosed as like the past as it was, but just kind of understanding like, you know what, I do need a little bit more like my kitchen set off a little bit more to give a little bit more privacy, but still some visual connection. So I think that's things that we try to be in tune to, is like really listen to where people are coming from. And then our design and floor plans shift based on the need of like what we're hearing from clients and what their desire and need is.
I mean, that's CoXist, right? That's how kind of that name happened. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I also have interior design background as undergrad. So for us, when we start a project, we listen to the client needs, right? But when we start doing designing, we always start with the floor plan. And that floor plan had to go through rounds and rounds of iterations to make sure that's functional, it's really kind of sits well in the site. And also you hit all the notes for that client's needs, right? So understanding the interior design aspect of it, then we focus on the architecture later on. It's something that we always strive to. Let's develop a good functional floor plan first before we think about architecture. Make sure the space itself we design blends in well with the landscape, with the topographic, with the neighborhood scale. And then we can start talking about the massing, the architecture itself later on.
And totally. Like the coexist part too is why we ended up naming it CoXist. Is like we try to listen to all our contractors. We're coexisting, like our buildings are not only coexisting in a world where there's interior and exterior, but we're coexisting with all the people around us, whether it's with our clients, with our contractors, just all the people in the world that we work with to get a project done. And we're just really strong believers in collaboration. Like, we are not doing the project alone. It's part of a much larger team. It's the team in our office that are working hard, that have great ideas. It's the contractors that come in and they're like, we have an idea, and they're like, hey, we can make this happen. Like, how do we build this together? The client that, clients have some great ideas that they put in there that maybe we didn't even think about. And just being able to listen and hear each other and respond. Like, I think that's all part of like our name and how we think about what we do.
Our ideas always, received well from builders. If they say, hey, we could do this. I always feel like, you might be stepping on somebody's toes. If you say, well, hey, maybe we could do this or try this out. And it's like, listen, go sit in the corner. You're the builder. Like, let us do the design. That's kind of how I feel internally whenever those conversations happen, when you try to give an idea. But,
sure. Well, I think sometimes it's more about like if everyone's on the same page about a vision, and the vision's real clear, with everyone understanding like where we are and where we're going, then everyone's conversation is cohesive and it's like adding to the story that's the same storyline. I think where sometimes there's a disconnect is like if the piece of advice is like disparate from like the actual storyline. But if we're all like talking about the project and on the same page, then of course I think it's better to hear from a contractor be like, hey, that doesn't work, but you know what, if you're really trying to make that float, this would really work well.
I got you. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, having early conversation and bring on the team that you trust, you work with before.
Right.
It's very crucial, right?
Yeah.
You know the team, they know everybody going to collaborate with each other. Everybody have a voice in this project, on the project that we work on. So everybody are welcome. Everybody's expertise are welcome. For us, we know there's a ceiling that we can plateau. Like there's other people are better in other stuff, right, than us. So what we do, we're really trying to collaborate with everyone. And that's the only way we can have the best result for our clients.
Yeah. I had something come to mind that I wanted to ask you about. Have you heard this? I think I was reading an article the other day, and it was saying, like, basically, I don't think it was talking specifically about architecture, but it was saying, like, well, I guess it was. It was saying, like, modernism or this modern style is, like, the death of craftsmanship. Have you heard that? Like, have you heard that notion about, like, how modern design is, like, basically killing off craftsmanship because there's like its lack of detail. It's getting rid of like crown molding, 5-step crown molding and baseboards and all this, ornate millwork. I mean, what do y'all think about that? Have you heard that?
I mean, to some extent, I kind of think about there's like good modernism and then there's not so great modernism. Like just being less. The saying is less is more, but
yeah.
That doesn't mean, like, if people are like, well, I'm just going to get rid of the baseboards and that's going to make it modern. Like,
right.
I think it could be the death of craftsmanship if people aren't really thinking about the details and why you're doing them. But at the same time, like, I don't even think what we're doing is, like, super modern anymore. Like, we're actually thinking more about this bespoke, like Frank had mentioned a little bit more. And I think there is kind of a reaction to a white box.
Yeah.
That people do want something that, like, they can feel, have more emotion and attachment to. And, like, for us personally, we feel like textures and variation and handmade feel of things gives something a life with the light and shadow, how things hit materials. And so I think the craftsmanship aspect is coming back. I think there's probably things swing in a pendulum, right?
Yes, you're right.
So, like, it goes from, like, oh, it's been so hyper-detailed, then we're going to swing to a new idea, which is modernism, and then you can go too far on that scale.
That's true.
And then we're kind of starting to swing back to, like, a craftsmanship part. And hopefully there's still enough craftsmen out there that are following their father's footsteps.
There definitely are. I work with a lot of them. Yeah, they're pretty amazing to watch. I agree with what you're saying, and I think, we've all seen, and people listening to this have all seen the white box that you're talking about, where it just feels like cold and empty, and you're like, why would anybody want to live in that? There's nothing to it. And I guess there is some beauty to it, because as a builder, you kind of see like what it takes to actually pull something off like that. That's just kind of flawless, and there's really no detail to it at all. But there actually is like a lot of hard effort to get it that way. But and that's not you guys at all. Like that's what I like about y'all's particular style, is that it's not that way. It's not just a cold, lifeless box. It is living. It has a lot of natural materials. There's plenty of natural light, and I think it's gorgeous. And I love the way that y'all y'all utilize all of these different elements to kind of tie together. So
Thank you.
I think when we design, we always think about how we live. We want to design something that we could live ourselves, right?
Right.
So if we don't like to live in a white box, we're not going to design a white box.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? The client who approach us, they seen our work, they're not going to ask us to do white box design. So I think that is something that we do. Yes, we do like about texture, color, and contrast, blending different materials. I think it's something that humanistic, have that human touch to it, right?
Yes,
it's something that we want to make connection through our design, through our craft, to build on that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking to that, because Frank and I were talking about this a little bit earlier about like just architecture in general and how you design. And I think, architects in general, like, you have to be an observer of the world. Sure. And I think that's really important just for anyone. Like, when you sit and observe and be quiet and look at what's going on in the world, you find, like, moments of wonder throughout that. And I think what we really try to do is, like, find a way to capture moments of wonder in the house. And so, like, you just find this, what are you trying to express? We're trying to tell a story. And so I think we think through a lot how we're putting things together to help tell the story and how to like make light really read in a certain space, or make a dark space is great too if that's what the mood is, but like really try to think about how things feel, not just what we see, because I think sometimes we rely on just sight a lot, and architecture and where we live is a lot more about feeling than just seeing. So
yeah, we're trying to invoke emotions through our design, right?
For sure.
I think people who hire us because they have issues, they have problem, right, over their current living conditions, so they want us to problem solve for them.
Absolutely.
So for us, it's really kind of solve how can we make their life better. Listen to them, right, and trying to find out what can we do to think about not just now the current living situation, but also think about the future, right? So our clientele varies from different demographic, right? We have clients that come in and say, I'm ready to build my forever home. This is my last home.
Yes.
Right? They're still very young. But when we design, we need to start thinking about, all right, as they're aging, what does a house need to have? We need to start accommodate those elements. So when you do age, we need to make sure to have, all the blockings in necessary place, you can put a handle on grab bar, the aisle got to be wider than the typical, door got to be bigger too. So things like that, I've got to think about long-term future planning while we're still doing the design for them. And we also have clients that come from different religious background. Right? We have a couple of clients that they're, the Hindu, right? So for them, they come to us because they want a home just specially tailored for them, right? And through that process, we had to go through, as an internal office, got to think about study their religions, right? For example, Vastu, right? How the building should be located, where the room should be located, where the headboard needs to be facing, where the stove needs to be facing. So every element matters, right? So placement all had to be matter. At the same time, they love mid-century approach design. So how can we blend that Hindu religious background and blend that with the mid-century approach concept? So there's a lot of investigation and those processes that we do for our clients. And it's so what we do is we spend a lot of time in the front end through a design process. We want to make sure that we start with a good foundation, good design, and good set of drawings before we break ground. So we can really capture and collaborate with all the parties, right? All the engineers. Make sure we're vetted through everybody's drawing set before we break ground. And that's kind of like the process that CoXist do.
That's awesome. Clients. I would have never even thought about that. That's awesome. Well, I wanted to go into kind of a last topic, but y'all are architects and y'all typically work with other builders, but you also do projects of your own, right?
Yes.
So y'all do you're involved in like some developments, right? Or can y'all talk about that? That's something that I'm actually not privy to, is kind of the architect as the developer and how all that works. So we've been working in the spec world for a while with developers, and as we've been doing that, we've kind of learned a lot of things along the way, and so we've been fortunate enough to be able to do a few of we're on our third project now that we've been architect as developer, and we've been working with investment from, my parents have helped out, we find investment from banks, but we really just do everything. We do the architectural drawings, we find the lot, work with the real estate agent doing that, run pro formas, just everything like a developer would do on a project, but we're doing it for ourselves. Okay.
And we just have really enjoyed working in that way for a multitude of reasons, but also it's been great for us to step into other markets as we complete one project. We think, what's the next thing we really want to like add to our portfolio and expand into? And so like currently we're doing a large project out by Ski Shores, which is the biggest project we'll have done. But we're doing that internally through our development side after building the other parts of business.
So for us, it's almost a case study. Right? We're using our own project as a case study to refine our design, refine our craft, and also it deal with different scale, different kind of clientele. Because you deal with, infill project in Zoger Barn Hill, those clients are different than the people who are buying like 7,000, 8,000 square foot home, right? So for us, it's really understanding that market. So I think we were just pretty fortunate that we're able to do that for ourselves and using that as a learning experience. So if we do want to get into that market, now we have the portfolio to show.
Yeah.
And now we can tap into that resources and expand on our design.
So what are the project that you got going on now? What is that exactly?
So it's a single family home, and it's just right off of Lake Austin. So it has a lake view. And it was an acre of undeveloped lot that we just kind of happened upon.
Okay.
And I don't think we were initially looking for something that size, but once we saw it, it was actually in bankruptcy, and we were able to buy it out of bankruptcy. And it just, I don't think anyone really knew it existed.
Okay.
So as we've been going through this process, we've learned a lot about like site development on an undeveloped lot. And then just, it's been an interesting journey too, because it's a beautiful house looking at the lake, and it has so many more bedrooms and layers of things that we've really started to think about, like how someone lives and how someone would utilize that space.
Yeah, and then, we're really trying to think, that lot is really unique. It's sloped towards the lake, right? So for us, it's really trying to think about how do we integrate architecture with the landscape, with the topographic, and make that very unique, right, for that kind of high-end spec. So we put a lot of thoughts behind it. So it's a 7,000 square foot home with 4-car garage. 2 of them are long enough to park a boat in there. Just think about like who's going to be buying. The people who are buying this house got to have a boat, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the people who will be buying this kind of house, they probably need some place to escape too. So we develop a golf room in the basement area, also become a panic room. Right.
Okay.
So
sure.
they can have a place to escape.
So they can panic and go play golf.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can lock himself in, right? So, and things like the amenity that typical people don't think about, but you need to start to think about their lifestyle, right? So we had designed this house really tailored towards that particular small niche of a demographic that will buy this kind of house.
Are y'all investing a lot of your own money, I assume, into this? And,
we are.
And so as a developer, doing the design, but you're also working with investors too, right?
That's right.
So how does that relationship work between the designer and the investors? What's
Sure. I mean, it's
input do they have, I guess?
So, I mean, the budget's really important, and I'm really conservative when I take a look at the budget to make sure that, we're making the right amount of profit in like a worst case scenario situation. Because you have to protect that money. Yeah. You have to think about like if someone had their money in the stock market, they need to be making more money, on this kind of real estate project. So then we just always try to form our numbers on that, try to make it as detailed as possible. And so I run numbers. I have a spreadsheet that I work with from the very beginning to kind of set budgets and how this works. So I think this is also very useful for us with our future clients and other developers, because we kind of understand like what goes into it, the stresses that go into it, like where you need to cut. It's really hard to cut for yourself, but you sometimes have to do it, especially as architects, as our own clients. That can be tricky. And then just having really great team members. And, we always tell people when we're working with them, sometimes the upfront cost of fee of working with someone that really knows their thing can seem expensive at first, but it pays off in the long run. Yeah. And so that's how we also view things. FIA Homes is actually now building that home for us. Okay. So we've kind of like, we design homes for them. We kind of go back and forth between the thing because we know that they're going to do a great job and the product is going to be great. And we really care about no matter what, there is profit, but then what's really important to us is also that what we're building has our name on it, that it's going to last a long time, that it has the quality. And I think that people at the end of the day will understand quality when they see it. So we really try to put a lot of effort and detailing into these houses because it's really an expression of what we can do, and we're not going to skimp on.
And that's a good point about quality. I worked with a guy, he would always say that they'll forget, they'll live in the house a year, maybe 2 years down the road, they'll forget about the schedule. They'll forget about the budget. But something they won't forget about is the quality.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
that's
Absolutely
because they're living there. And so never, ever cut quality. Like, never skimp on that. Like, yes, it might cost more. It might take longer. But, you know, you'll forget that.
Yeah.
But you're not going to forget the quality.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And the last 10%, right? Like, people see the last 10%. And I think that's really hard when people are kind of tired of, like, maybe spending the money or getting to that point, or the schedule's tight and you just want to finish. Like, the last 10% is really important.
Yep.
It's really what you see, and it really matters a lot. So we just have been thinking a lot about, like, okay, it's going to take what it takes, like you said, because if you want something to look like quality, that last percent is 100%
and it's funny
noticed.
too, like, you can have a great relationship the entire time, and then when you get to the final, like you said, the final 10%, if you don't deliver, you know, if you don't get all the punch items dealt with in a timely manner, and if you don't really nail that last 10%, that could really damage the relationship.
Absolutely.
Even if it's something that has gone well the whole time, you could really screw it up right there at the end. Like, you know, everybody's tired, everybody's frustrated, but it's like, that's when you really got to buckle down and just get it done and grind it out, and everybody will be happy. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, how's y'all's working relationship? How does that work?
Well, I think we do some things together that, well, and I'll go into that, and then there's some things we kind of separate and do well. And I think when we were starting on the initial design of a project and the thought process, we really talk back and forth and collaborate. And we're fortunate that we have a very similar view on design
aesthetic, yeah.
and design aesthetic. So a lot of times I feel like we just are saying what's on the other person's mind. So, I mean, it would be much more difficult if we had like two different motives kind of going forward than just trying to like make it work.
Right.
And then we have this saying that like if neither one of us is not happy with it, then it's not right. We got to change it.
Yeah.
And so there's a sense of compromise too there that, you know, it's going to have to take both of us to agree on something. Thankfully, we most things that we do design-wise, the big picture things, we definitely see eye to eye.
Well, I think that tension and that compromise spurs creativity.
New solutions, absolutely.
And also push and pull each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to really come up with a new idea, and we'll come up with a fresh idea together, right? I mean, her and I really sit next to each other, 2 feet away from each other for the last 10 years. So you see each other every single day. After work, you see each other again, you know? So we're raising our kids together. So there's always, you know, a point where you need to either turn it on or just turn it down. When you go to work, even when you have a disagreement, you got to work it out. You cannot have argument in front of employees, right?
Yeah.
So, but because through those kind of choices that make us stronger and make us better team together, right? Yeah. So every time when we have, you know, seeing differently, you know, one of us will step back or we will step back together and reset, and then go back again to the drawing board to make sure both of us buy into the design, are happy. Because in order for us to move forward the project, everybody, not just us, our staff, all need to buy into the design in order to, you know, have better result, right? Because they will be the one helping us drafting, creating the drawing set, working with the contractors. Everybody needs to know the design directions and into it and loving it. So then we can have a better result.
Absolutely.
And I think Frank is really great at finessing a project and like really making everything work and the proportions just like beautiful and elegant. He's like amazing at like taking the big idea and like sculpting that idea. And I tend to be good at the details of things of like, okay, this is where it is. How does it work? How do we put it together? How do we, you know, MacGyver it sometimes? So I'm really, you know, I enjoy that part. I like how things come together. I like kind of, my dad we used to build things in the backyard, like kind of figure out how, like problem solve, how does this go together? I really enjoy that aspect. And so that kind of complements each other to like, you got to make the magic happen somehow. Like it looks beautiful, but it takes a lot of thought and effort to also figure out how it all comes together so it like maintains that.
Yeah. Well, okay. So outside of work, what do y'all do for fun?
Well, I would say in the younger age, when we right out of school, I love doing woodblock print. So I like the carving
Woodblock
wood.
print, yeah. Okay.
So that was had the passion for a while. I would say last decade or so, I got into cycling.
Okay.
So I think cycling, road cycling, and mountain biking become a hobby where it really kind of helped me to escape from the stress of everyday life. She's amazing. She'll let me go out, 4 hours at a time, be out, cycling with my friends. And also just lately, last year or so, also got into fly fishing.
Really? Yeah.
Fly fishing and fly tying, something that it kind of really helped me engage with the nature itself, something that is very peaceful for me, and also sometimes very challenging. So I think Megan also could say, if I want to do something, I go 110%.
Yes.
I hate doing anything half-assed.
Yeah.
So if I love cycling, that's 10 years I've been doing a lot of cycling.
Yeah.
I loved it. And now I'm doing fly fishing. I want to be good at what I do.
Yeah,
I don't want to do it
absolutely.
half-assed. Otherwise, no point, right?
Fly some beautiful flies, I will say. They're little art pieces.
I've seen like YouTube videos and like Instagram videos of people doing fly ties, and it's so crazy how it's like an art in itself.
Yeah,
like you're
absolutely.
recreating like a little bug or a critter out of a hook and some string. Like it's amazing to watch.
Yeah.
It's
meditation
really cool.
for me as well.
I see that. I can get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of rediscovering fishing myself. Like I went fishing as a kid, with my dad and all the time, and hunting too. But it was like fishing it never really was anything that I was very interested in.
Yeah.
But I think now that I have kids, I'm kind of rediscovering it. And we went fishing at the coast several weeks ago, and I was like, man, this is all right. Like, I kind of understand why people do this now. Like, I kind of understand it. Like, it's very relaxing, and then being able to teach them to spend time with them, and teach them the patience, and I get it. Like, I'm kind of rediscovering it. So,
well, I think that's really a lot of the reason Frank got into fly fishing, because our son is like obsessed with fishing.
Really?
Yes.
And so it was like a great opportunity to like spend time with them. Like he just lives and breathes fishing.
Yeah.
He umpired for a season baseball to pay for his own little fishing boat.
That's really cool.
And he even started his own fishing website selling fishing lures that he makes. So like he's just
No kidding.
like
Yeah.
Well, do you know the website?
Yes, it's NNA Baits.
NNA?
Like N, his friend's name starts with an N.
Okay.
And A for Asher Baits.
Baits and tackle.
Baitandtackle.com.
NNA Bait and Tackle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm going to have to check that out. That's really cool.
Yeah, because of him. Because he also played baseball, so he played tournament every other weekend. He's asked me, say, Dad, I want to go fishing on the off weekend. And for me, I don't enjoy bobber fishing. It's not something I really enjoy.
Yeah.
And when we went on vacation to Georgia one summer, and I saw a bunch of fly fishing poster everywhere, I said, what? Let me take a look into what fly fishing is all about, and realizing it's more challenging. You actually hunt fish, now it's just fishing, right? So you have to learn about reading the water, reading the weather, reading the bugs, what is hatching, and then how to approach the fish. And fly casting is another technique you got to master, right? So there's so much involved. There's so much technical thing, similar to architecture. Right, so
I was like, we're going to tie this back into architecture.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So it's really challenging for me, and so now that become a thing between him and I, that we kind of spend some time on the river or on the lake sometimes. So
that's really cool.
And you?
I play sand volleyball for fun.
I love sand volleyball.
It's so much fun.
With the Summer Olympics, that's our favorite thing to watch is the sand volleyball.
Oh,
I love it. It's so fun to play. Yeah.
And it's just, we've been playing over at Moon Tower for a couple of seasons now, and it's just like we have a blast.
Yeah.
And then I've gotten into playing pickleball with some
really?
friends in the neighborhood.
I haven't tried pickleball yet. I know that's like the latest craze.
Yeah.
Pickleball.
It's fun. It's easy. And so I just like getting out there doing like activities with friends like that, but that's really been and I still do we've been trying to do as sports have started, it's tailed off, but just also finding ways to do like our own personal like art things on weekends. So we've been carving time out
Yeah.
that. We kind of look like old people. We each have our own little art trolley that we roll out and then do like little arts and crafts for a little bit, but it's like very therapeutic.
Yes,
so.
that's
Yeah,
right.
well, that's important though, to like take a little time for yourself. I'm still working on trying to get my wife to take a little. It's easier now that like both of the kids are in school, because before they were younger, but now both of them are in school. So I'm trying to encourage her to like, hey, get a craft, or be creative, do something, write, draw.
Yeah.
She can be very creative like when she wants to be, but it's hard to get her to
Well, I think it's hard speaking from a mom
Yes,
myself
absolutely,
and
yeah.
having young kids and then also trying to do all these things. It's hard. My kids are a little older because I have 11 and 13, and it's hard. It's like almost like I'm rediscovering myself again, because your kids become so much part of you, especially when they're little. They take up so much of your time. Like I used to think I worked so many hours a day and that it was so challenging that when I had kids it was going to be so easy.
Yeah.
And
It's
they're
completely
hard.
different.
It's really rewarding, but it's hard. It's a long day. You put so much of your heart and love into them.
Yeah.
But as they grow, then you start finding like you have time for yourself again. But it's really important that you find that time.
Yeah,
So.
I agree. I think you got to capitalize on it for sure. I know it's challenging. It's especially for mothers too. It's just different. You got to find time for yourself. I think that's
right.
great.
Absolutely,
You have
it's
to.
important.
So,
For sure.
well, Megan, Frank, I appreciate you guys coming on, and I wanted to end with one last question, which was, if you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be?
That's a tough one. But I think sometimes it comes down to value, actually. When I really think about it, what I would change about the industry is, I think maybe not just our field, but I do feel like sometimes our field undervalues what we do in terms of when they're asking for fees or what it takes. So architects put so much time and effort into drawings, and we're with clients for like a year to 2 years. So it's a lot. And I think sometimes we're all kind of fighting for jobs that sometimes we kind of undercut the value that we can bring to the table.
Sure.
So with like what our fees and things are. So I think the one thing I would just encourage everyone is like ask for what you deserve to be paid for on projects. It's really important for all of us to survive in the industry. And I think clients and people understand that. They all want us to survive. Right. So I guess it's not something I hate about the industry itself, but like, encouraging people to make sure that we're all standing up for each other as a whole.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
I totally agree with Megan. Yeah, I think that's kind of like the transformation that we're going through right now as a firm, how we practice. I think we were taught in school, you got to deliver the service, be the architect that you are. You put architecture first. You don't really kind of ask for the value that you deserve. That's kind of like a stigma through architecture school, right? Okay. So now running your own business, you're understanding our time's money, the effort that we're putting for our client is so much value, right? With that, the product that we deliver for our clients. So as a whole, as an industry, we need to really stand up for each other and really not gain respect, but also just getting the fee that we need to support not just ourselves, but our staff. Because we do have staff that depend on us, right? So we had to go out there to hunt for the job.
Absolutely.
Right? Hunt for the project that we want. In order to do that, it takes a lot of time and effort. And we want to make sure that we can all benefit from that.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I think that's a perfect note to end on. And I appreciate y'all's time coming on. I thank you for being here. So it's exciting. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you for having us. This was great.
Yeah, this is fun.
Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.